Hello artists, welcome to your Emoji Jar class. My name is Miss M and I'm from Young at Art. Today in front of you, you should have your jar, a paper towel, your large brush and your small brush, a cup of water. You should also have wax paper. You do not have to pour your colors out onto your wax paper. That's just for you to mix colors on later if you need to. For your colors, you should have yellow, blue, red, and then your black and white. Again, you do not have to pour out your colors onto your wax paper. That's just something to mix on later on if you want to. So today we're going to be making this really cool emoji jar, and you can put different expressions on there later, and I can show you how. So really fun. You can use it as a container to put things in. I feel like they could even hold pencils if the pencils weren't too long and weren't going to be knocked over. But again, just a cool little decoration piece that could be used for storage. All right, so once you have all of your materials, you are going to go ahead and wash and dry both of your brushes. Perfect. I'm just going to put my brushes aside. Actually move this out of the way too, because if you want, if you do feel like your jar needs to be clean, you can always take that little bit of wetness from your washing and drying and just kind of clean off the outside a little bit. Open the jar lid, clean off the inside a little bit. Make sure your jar is nice and clean. So once you're done washing and drying your brushes, if you wanted to use your paper towel as a way to just make sure everything is nice and washed and dried onto your container, you can. Easy as that. And be sure there's no wet spots, everything is nice and dry. And then you can put your paper towel where you need to. I just thought it'd be a good idea just in case if we wipe down our jars with a little bit of water on it. So wash and dry your two brushes, and then you can go ahead and wipe down, make sure your jar isn't wet. And then you can leave the lid off to the side because we are going to paint the inside of it yellow. So with your larger brush, go ahead and dip your brush into the yellow. Be sure it's not dripping. This can be right straight into your container, but you are going to paint the bottom all yellow. I'm just kind of moving my brush in an up and down motion. If I see any big bumps or big chunks of paint, I'm going to go over it to smooth it out. So just up and down. Kind of get a little bit more round with your brush, that outer kind of lip area. And your paint is actually made for painting on metals and plastics, so it should hold a little bit better than usual. Once you are done painting the bottom, you can go ahead and grab more paint if you need. Again, be sure it's not dripping. And I just kind of paint in an up and down motion, almost like I'm making a sun, going round out here, and then just start, and you're going to go all the way to the very end of the inside of your container, your jar. So as you can see, I'm going all the way out. You don't want to have too much paint on there, and you want to go over any bumps. Like so. And I'll be doing a couple of coats of this yellow paint, just so I make sure it's a little bit more solid, because I can see all those stripy lines. But before I do any additional coats, I do want to make sure it's nice and dry, so when I go in there with another coat, the wet paint doesn't keep moving. So again, I just kind of paint it up and down in the center part. You can move your brush a little bit more round on this outer area, and then start from that circle and go all the way around, making sure you have all those spaces covered, so you don't want to see any of just like the clear glass showing through. And then if you get any paint on this outer lip area, you can go ahead and just wipe it off onto your fingers and wipe it off on your paper towel. And again, I'm going to give this a couple minutes to dry, and then go back and give it another coat of yellow. Take your time painting inside of the jar, but while you're giving it a couple minutes to dry, you can just sit your brush right on top, and you can think about the emoji face that you want to draw on the outer area of your jar. So for instance, I made this really fun piece right here. And before I went on to my jar and actually painted it, I did do a practice run on my wax paper. So if you wanted to do like a tester onto your wax paper before you made it official, that's a great idea. Also, a couple things when we go in there and we create our expressions is you can have two. It can be a two-sided one where you paint one on one side and you paint another on the other side, so you can kind of have the fun expression showing from one day to another, whichever one you want to be more visible. So again, it can be a two-sided jar. When you build the face area, be sure that you are taking a good amount of space. So look at the space from the top of the eye to the top of the container right here, right before it touches that lip that curves out. And look at the bottom part of the mouth and where it kind of has a space from here to here. So everything is mostly in this middle area. If I were to split this area in half, be, you know, somewhere about here. So the eyes are just above that halfway mark and the mouth area is a little bit below that halfway mark. So you want to definitely have a game plan of where you want things to be painted. You can even do like an invisible one with your fingers just to kind of get a good feel for where you want everything to be. Also, another thing to think about is the harder you push on your brush, the thicker the line becomes. So these are thinner lines, and I'm pushing a little bit harder on this end on my small brush, and very light at the end where it's a thinner line. So just think about the harder you push, the thicker the lines become. Another thing to think about is when you're building on top of one color to the next. So before I put this black dot on top, and I use the back of my brush to make that perfect little dot, I had to wait until the white was dry and not so shiny, so the white and black didn't mix together. Same with the tongue. After I was done drawing and painting the mouth area, I waited a couple minutes, and then I was able to build this pink by mixing the red and white on top. And for the circle shape, the tongue shape, and the mouth shape, I did create the outline in whatever color it was. So I made a white outline with my small brush, filled it in with my small brush. The mouth area, I outlined the mouth shape with my small brush and black paint, filled it in, waited for that to dry. And then with the tongue area, I mixed my red and white, and then I drew the outline of the shape and then filled it in. So each one of those shapes I outlined with whatever color it is and then filled it in, so I had the shape. And we are only using our small brush when we draw the shape or shapes of our emoji faces. So again, I would definitely do a couple practice runs. I did just kind of make some on a piece of paper so you can kind of see some ideas. But if there's an emoji face or faces that you like, you're welcome to do whichever one you'd like to build. But again, have a game plan. Think about the pressure on your brush. Think about letting things dry before you build anything on top of them. And then also think about drawing the shape before you fill it in. So I'm going to wash and dry my small brush. I'm just going to put it off to the side, just in case I got some paint on it. But again, be sure you've given the inside of your cup a couple minutes or your jar a couple minutes to dry, and then you can go back on top of it with another coat. And again, your paint, which is a little bit thicker than mine, is going to be made for plastics and metal. So it's going to actually be like a multi-surface acrylic paint, so you can paint it on other things besides canvases. I think it's also better on your multi-surface yellow paint is also good on wood pieces too, and rocks, and just all types of different fun things to paint on. So yours should be sticking a little bit better onto your plastic piece. And again, this is the inside of my jar, and I've given it a second coat. And truly later on, after we're done at the very end, you just have to be very careful of anything on the outside, but you can go back with a second coat, oh, excuse me, with a third coat or fourth coat, just be sure you don't see these streaky lines as much. And you can always put the lid back on top of your yellow container and take it home and make sure it's really dry, and then go back in there with more coats. Perfect. All right, so I'm gonna wash and dry my large brush. And I'm gonna make 2 different emoji faces, one on one side and then one on the other. While I'm making my faces, I can put the jar lid back on just so that I don't get any of that yellow on my fingers. And then I can find, you know, 2 good spots, one on one side, one on the other, where I want to build my emoji face. I think what I'm gonna do is I'm gonna make one of these that I have on my paper. Now that you've already seen this one, I'm not going to do this one, so let's do number 1 right here, number 1. I'm going to go ahead and put my large brush aside because I'm only working with my small brush. And with number 1, I'm working with black, and there's also some white in there too. And again, I'm going to kind of imagine where I want those eyes to be. If this is the center, maybe work a little bit higher. If you wanted to watch this example before you kind of went in there, you're welcome to. If you're ready, you're welcome to kind of jump in, but just it's a good idea to watch the sample first, just so you can kind of get a good feel for how things look as soon as you put them on the jar. So again, this is the middle area, and it looks like I have 2 like sideways V's coming towards each other with a little bit of space. So I'm gonna imagine right here, right here. It's a good amount of space. I don't want to build too small. And I think it'd be great because my mouth area would be right here. I'm going to build a good amount of space, so if I was to lay this on my desk, the eyes aren't too close to each other. I have enough space where I can see both eyes pretty well. And this is kind of a sideways V. If it helps, you can always kind of move your jar in different directions, so you can kind of get a good feel for how to hold your jar to where your hand's steady. So there's those 2 V's pointing at each other. The mouth area, again, it's a little bit underneath the eyes. It doesn't go further out than the eye areas. It looks like it kind of stops at each end. I'm gonna make that top line, so a little bit of space. I'm gonna draw it out first. Has a little bit of a curve to it. I'm gonna probably stop right about there. I can even make a dot if I need to. Come down a little bit here. Come down. And if you accidentally messed up while it's still wet, you can just kind of use your fingernail to pick it up, the side of your finger. Later on, after it's dry, you can always chip away at it as well. But again, the left and the right side of the mouth don't really go past the eye areas. I'm gonna then make a line underneath the teeth. And the teeth I'll paint white later. I just need to make sure that black is nice and dry. It's kind of going side to side and everything underneath it. So I pretty much drew it out first, and then I can go in there with my small brush and fill it in a little bit better. There's a little mistake right there. Let me try to pick it up with my fingers. The paint does dry pretty fast, so if you wanted to go in there and give things another coat, be sure to give them at least like 3 or 4 minutes. And then you can go on top of them to make another coat if you want them to be darker, or you don't want to see the lines of your brush as much. You can always give them another coat, but be very careful and just give things at least 3 minutes or so. At least 2 or 3 minutes before you build on top. Again, once it's dry, I can go in there and kind of scrape in with my fingers. But if it looks shiny, it's still wet, so you might want to give it some time if it feel like it's gonna smear. kind of round this part a little bit more, make it a little bit more round on the bottom. Hopefully you can see these images if you're working on yours, but again, if you have another image in mind, you can totally do that one. Once you're done, you can go ahead and wash and dry your small brush really well. And for the sake of video time, I am going to fill in the white area, so the top part of his teeth, so they don't look so yellow. Be sure your black is nice and dry before you go in there, if you're doing the white teeth. But small brush only again. And then be sure the black's dry. Mine's probably still a little bit wet. And you can kind of very carefully fill in the mouth area. Oh, I think I got into the black a little bit. But I can wait for it to dry and touch it up again. And see that the teeth get a little bit gray, but that's totally fine. You can always go back and touch it up. Be sure I don't have any black on my brush when I go in there to fix the teeth. I think I do want to kind of turn my jar upside down to get this part a little bit more too. So again, don't feel afraid to kind of go in there and turn your jar. Get nice and comfortable. Once you're done, let it dry for a couple minutes. If you are doing the other side, which I'll show you mine on just a moment, be sure whenever you do turn it, it's kind of directly on the other side. So this would be like the center area of this face. And be careful not to touch anything on this side, because that would be so sad to smear all that fun emoji face that you just made. But again, be sure it's directly on the other side. I'm going to make another face. I just kind of hold my jar, from the top lid to the very bottom, nice and comfortable. You are welcome to start yours if you wanted to see that first example, or if you wanted to watch a second example and start. Again, I think it's a good idea to do a practice run on your wax paper so you get a good feel for it. Be sure the eyes are on this top half, the mouth is on the bottom half. Then I'm going to do the hearts one. So small brush, red paint. Again, this is my halfway point, so from here to here, and from here to here. And the eyes on this emoji, they're actually kind of slanted, so I'm going to maybe like just start out by making like a V shape, a slanted V shape, and then another slanted V shape, so you get that bottom shape of the heart. Kind of fill it in a little bit more after that. So again, they're a little bit slanted. One kind of goes out to the left, one goes out to the right. That red might need another coat. Once you have those two kind of slanted V shapes, you can kind of go in there and fill them in. Just two little curves on the top. And then just kind of build it in towards that V shape, getting it nice and clean. And I can see all those line marks, so that's a good way of knowing that later on. I should probably go back and do another coat to get rid of those once it's nice and dry. I'm gonna clean up these two kind of rainbow shapes. And again, if you didn't get the shape right, you can always kind of wipe it off with your fingernail or with your nail. You can wait for it to dry up a little bit more if you feel like it's gonna smear too much. Be sure those are pretty even on top. You might have to build a little bit higher. Be sure you have these two areas where they kind of come in, on the left side and the right side. Be sure the outer edges look nice and clean. You can always go back and outline them. And then once you're done with your 2 heart shapes, you can let them dry and go back again. For the mouth, I'm just gonna do similar to the other one, where I come down a little bit lower and outline the top part. Then come down on the left, come down on the right. They don't go out further than the 2 hearts. You might want to go out just a little bit further out. There's a little bit of a curve on them, this top line. Pretty similar to the other one. Curve on the bottom of the mouth. You can fill it in. Let's say you're doing this shape right here. I can show you that in just a moment. You can always make these nice oval shapes, so they're a nice round oval shape. Curvy rainbow shape. This almost looks like an M for the mouth, so you can always turn your brush a little bit, excuse me, your jar a little bit, and make that M shape for the mouth. For the teardrop shape, you can use your blue, and you can start at the bottom of the eye, come out to the left and back into the point. Start at the point, come out a little bit, curve, and then come back to that point as well. I think just so that I can show you guys, I'll show you the mouth area. So let's say you're doing this mouth, you can always turn your jar the opposite way that you need to make it into an M shape. So I'm just going to make it into an M for that mouth shape. Oops. So again, you can turn it like so. The lid's on the left side. You can go in there and kind of mess with it. Be sure it fits in the space with the eyes and stuff too. For the tear shape, I'm going to do it on the other side so you can kind of see a little bit better. Small brush. You can maybe make a point where you want to start it, just a small point, and then curve out to the left, curve out to the right, and then fill it in. Just go back up to make it pointier again. Like so. So again, you can always turn your jar. It's a little bit easier for your hand. That teardrop, I made a dot. I went out to the left, to the right, and just made sure it's nice and curvy on the bottom. Make sure it's the correct size too. You can always kind of scratch at it with your fingernail or your finger just to kind of get those a little bit thinner. But take your time. Go back and look at those shapes. Go back and give them another coat. Be careful again not to smear any colors. I'm going to open my jar back up very carefully. Ooh, I'm kind of scared to smear my jar, so maybe if yours is still, oh my goodness, why is this so, I forgot how strong it was. But be sure if you are opening it back up, paint inside of it, do not touch any of the paint. It looks like I might have grabbed a little bit of that blue. But while that's drying, can go back. Again, be super careful, especially if you made the lid very tight. You don't want to scrape away at your emoji faces. I'm going to go back to giving another coat. Hopefully I'm not in the way of your sketches. Really fun, really cute. Take your time if you want to go back and give things another coat. Thinking about the breaking down of the shapes. Really cute. And if you wanted to start all over another one, you can truly just wash it away with your paper towel and your cup of water. You might have to get nice new water if your water looks kind of dirty. Perfect. All right, artists, I think we are all set with our jars. Again, be sure everything is nice and super dry before you put anything inside of it. Anything shiny means that it's still wet. And if you are at school and you're taking it home, just be sure that you put the lid back on once you're done, and be very careful of carrying your jar so the outside area doesn't touch anything and smear. Let's put these side by side so we can see them. So fun. These are so cute, really cute storage. I hope you had a great time, and hopefully we'll see you soon.